Vasudeva. Hari Om. Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Vasudeva. Welcome to all our brothers and sisters. So we are here once again to continue our study of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So last week, we were discussing up to the third aphorism and a little bit of fourth aphorism also we have discussed. So what Patanjali explained is, so the suspension or the stoppage of the vritti or behavior of the mind, that state is called yoga. And in last aphorism, in aphorism third, he said that, explained that when this happens, that means when suspension of the behavior of mind happens, then the perceiver can be stable in his original existence or original state. And in this fourth aphorism, he is explaining that if the suspension or the stoppage of the behavior of mind does not happen, then the result is that the perceiver gets identified with his behavior. So when he gets identified with the behavior, then it is no more his real state of existence, because he is identified with the behavior of his mind. So the mind acts through the activity of the five senses. So here, what is to be suspended is not the activity of the mind. What is to be suspended is the behavior of the mind. So, if the activity of mind is suspended, then there is no use of mind. Having the mind, so mind is also an important instrument given to us, which is to be used properly. But in our daily life, we have to observe ourselves whether we are active or we are busy. There is a hell of difference between activeness and busy. So most of the people are busy in their daily life. Most of the time they are busy. So to be active is a healthy state. When our mind is in a healthy state, we can do things in a better manner. That is the very purpose of practice of yoga. When we practice yoga, that means when we practice suspension of the behavior of the mind, then our activity in the physical plane, in the mundane world, will be more easier and we do things in a better manner. But when our mind is busy, then what happens? To be busy is a sort of disease. So it is because it is unnatural. When the senses are working simultaneously, how can we explain about the state of busy mind? We have 5 senses. The senses and their sense organs. Senses and the corresponding sense organs physically. Sense organs are on the physical plane, but the senses are working on the vital plane. So these 5 senses. So through each sense, we receive the image of the objects from the outer world. And this image is projected on the screen of our mind. That is what we have studied before. So, if one image is projected at a time, then there will be no problem for perception. But if more than one image is projected simultaneously, then what happens? It will be like, as we have discussed earlier, if there is a projector and you have arranged another 1 or 2 projectors from 2 different angles, different directions, and all these 3 projectors are focusing and projecting simultaneously on the same single screen, then how it will be? Everything will be a mesh. Suppose you went into a cinema theater where there is a big screen and you wanted to enjoy the cinema in the theater. You can enjoy the cinema only when one cinema or one picture is projected on that screen. Suppose simultaneously from other 2 sides, there are another 2 cinemas are also projected. So altogether 3 cinemas are being projected from 3 different directions on one screen. So you cannot enjoy any one cinema because it is all mixed up and it is a big mesh. So what you call busy is such a state of mind. When all the 5 senses or 4 senses or 3 senses, more than one sense, they receive the image from outside and then it is projected on the mind, then the mind gets into this state which we call busy. So, this is not a comfortable experience. So, that is non-yogic. So, when anybody is busy in the daily life, that shows that he is not yet, he has entered into the practice of yoga. Because this behavior is not suspended. So when the behavior of mind is not suspended, then each of the sense makes its own image in its own direction. Then what happens is the man gets tired and sick when this happens the whole day. How it happens? Suppose there is one person, and when another person is there before you, what is happening? When you are not on the yogic path, when you are not practicing yoga, you get identified with that person. That means you see that person through the sense of sight, you hear that person through the sense of hearing. So then the image of that person is projected through both these senses at a time. You hear the person, you see the person. Then what happens? You are no more yourself, because you have received already the impressions, images of that person on the screen of your mind. So then you start reacting towards these images received, these impressions which were formed in your mind about that person. You start reacting. So this is what is happening. Vritti sarupyam. Itaratra means otherwise. If this yoga is not practiced, then you get identified with the behavior of the mind. So that keeps you always busy and always in tension, uncertainty, insecurity, all these problems you will face. So your experience is no more a happy experience, because you are not able to get settled in your own original form. So in the absence of yoga practice, we identify ourselves with our impressions about others. So what we call others about persons around us, that means that others means it is an image of the other person which is made in your mind through impression. So like this, every day we come across many persons. We make transactions with many persons. So with every person, your mind makes so many impressions or images. And all these images are focused on your mind. Then your mind is no more tranquil. So then we begin to act in terms of others. So our action, what is important is how we act. Actually, we have to act as ourselves. But we act in terms of others. For example, when Lysan is there before me, so my mind starts making impression about Lysan. And then I think I start thinking that what lies on is thinking about me. So then what happens? I get identified with my impression. And I act according to my impression, which is not real action of mine. So in terms of others means, in terms of our impression about others, whether she is thinking of me in a good manner or whether she is thinking about me in an otherwise. So all these thoughts enter into my mind when I get identified, and they reflect in my action. Then my action is not real action. This is our reaction towards our environment. So what we call environment is the impression or the image of the persons and objects around us. That is what we call our environment. So then it is no longer the activity which is ours, or it is no more our original activity when we get identified. That means we live in the mind and senses. Actually, we have to live as ourselves. If we live as our mind and senses, that means, suppose I am wearing this dress. So, if I think about the other person before me, and if I think that I make an impression that the other person is observing me about my dress, then what is happening? I am living not as myself. I am living as my shirt. So I cannot be my shirt. My shirt is different from me. I am is I am. But the shirt what we are wearing, or the dress what I am wearing, is different from me, but I forget that. I feel as myself identified with my dress. In the same manner, we get identified with our senses, with our mind, with this reaction. So we do not exist as ourselves anymore. How we exist? We exist as our impressions about the other person or about the objects and all these things. This is good, this is not good, this is a friend, this is an enemy, like that, all these impressions. Our thoughts will be conditioned by our impression. So this is the actual danger. Our thoughts cannot be any more pure thoughts. They are conditioned by this impression. That is what is happening when we come across persons and objects around us, due to the impressions. And then our ideas, when this happens, when our thoughts are conditioned by our impressions, then our ideas are shaped by our reactions. It is not no more action, it is only a reaction. So every unit of our activity in our daily life gets confused. The mind gets disturbed because of all these impressions. When there are many, many impressions that are formed in our mind about others, then the mind gets disturbed. Suppose if I think what is the other person before me is thinking about me, so then I may feel that, oh, maybe this other person is thinking bad of me. So then what happens? I feel as if, that means the image of other person is in my mind. The person is outside, but this image is in me, making all the impressions. Then I feel within myself that the other person is thinking bad of me. So maybe when he goes out, he will speak bad of me with others. So all this is, they are made in my own mind. It is not true. Therefore, the mind gets disturbed. That causes fear about other person around us. Fear. Master used to give wonderful example. Suppose if any one of you may tell me that what you are telling is useless, you are a fool, like that, if any one of you may tell me, so after this 1 hour, every one of you will go away, go home. And after going home, the person who told me this, that I am a fool and all this is not true, when he returns to his house, he is engaged in his own work, he forgets all these things. But for me, it starts as a reaction in my mind. Why should he think that I am useless, that I am a fool? And when I go back to my place, this thought keeps lingering in my mind. So while eating my food also, I cannot enjoy my food because in my mind constantly this thought is lingering. Again and again it is revolving in me. Why should he call me a fool? Actually, he said this only once. But his image in me, the image of that person in me, is calling me a fool 100 times and 1,000 times. So I cannot have my food, I cannot have my rest and sleep. So the whole night I keep awake thinking that why should he call me a fool? Then what happens? The whole night I cannot sleep. Next morning I feel very weak. Then I go to the doctor. Then the doctor checks my blood pressure and he says, your blood pressure has gone high. Why? Because I have not slept the whole night because of this thought. Why should he call me a fool like that? And then the doctor prescribes some investigations and then some medicines, all these things. I have to pay much for all these things, and came home very sick and more sick because of taking all these medicines also. Then now who is responsible for this state of my body? I am only responsible. How the other person is responsible? He has only once said that what I am telling is nonsense, and he said, called me a fool. But afterwards, he has gone home, he has forgotten all these things. He had his food, he could sleep well, he is quite healthy and active. Only me. So I proved myself that I am a fool by doing this. All this is because of the reaction in my mind. That is the thing. So, why all these things are happening? It is because the lower centers of consciousness are active with our impressions. When our mind makes impressions, then what happens? It stimulates the lower centers in us. Especially, we have our navel center, which is center of emotions. So that starts stimulated. and also the spleen center also gets stimulated. All these lower centers, when they are stimulated, when they get stimulated in us, then they create great disturbance in the physical body. So the lower centers of our consciousness are active with our impressions and not with the needs of ourselves or others. Actually, the lower centers should be active only towards the needs. Needs belong to our physical body, and desires belong to our mind. So, when these lower centers are stimulated by these impressions, then desire will occupy the place of the need. The mind produces thoughts in terms of our desires and not with the needs. Then what happens? The mind starts making its own succession of thoughts. One after another, many thoughts get formed, and then they form our own logic. Then what happens? We form our own logic. So every person makes his own logic in this manner. Then what happens? How will be the transaction between all these persons? Every person has his own logic and his own logic. So every person acts according to his own logic, because all this logic is built up on the impressions which that person has received. So then what happens? No two minds agree upon any one single concept. No, there will be no agreement. They disagree with each other. One says that this place is very good, and the other person says, no, it is not good. So there will be always a disagreement. Even at home, in the family also, that is what is happening. What the husband says is not agreeable to the wife. What the wife says is not agreeable to the husband. What the parents say, that is not agreeable to the children. What the children say, that is not agreeable to the parents. So there is disharmony in the family because of this type of wrong type of behavior of the mind. Actually, we have the intelligence. Everyone has the intelligence. But this intelligence is conditioned by our own impressions and logic. So when intelligence gets conditioned, then it loses its power of discrimination. That is the problem. So there is no chance of using pure intelligence. There is pure intelligence in us. So we never have any chance of using our pure intelligence. Therefore, we cannot make any discrimination. Because everyone has a capacity to understand everything according to his own logic. Every person tries to understand anything according to his own logic, but not actually according to the truth or reality. Because his mind has built up its own logic. So necessity takes the place of real need. When this happens, then we start acting only according to the necessity, but not according to the need. This is because of this type of behavior. And then what happens between the people in the society? Competition, spirit of competition increases. Because when every person is like this, conditioned, every person, his intelligence is conditioned by these impressions and logic, then between the persons it will be a spirit of competition that acts. So competition replaces adjustment and understanding. When there is a spirit of competition, then there is no proper understanding between the person and another person. When there is no proper understanding, no person likes to adjust himself with the other person. No cooperation. Competition has taken the place of cooperation. Then what happens? When a person is influenced by the spirit of competition, then his behavior is not really as a human being. Competition replaces adjustment and understanding. Then what happens? Life becomes like a battlefield. When there is competition, that is what is happening now in the world. Everywhere you see, from the very childhood, in everyday life, there is competition. So then, this competition, spirit of competition is increasing, intensifying, then it is like a battlefield. That is why most of the people, they feel that life is a battlefield, but life is really not a battlefield. You made it, we make it as a battlefield by the spirit of competition. If we replace it by spirit of cooperation, then it is not a battlefield, it will be like Eden garden, our life. But we ourselves made our lives a battlefield because of this spirit of competition. Then what happens with the spirit of, when the spirit of competition has increased, has taken our life, then there will be sense of insecurity. Every moment we feel insecure. Sense of insecurity. Every moment of our life we are haunted by the sense of insecurity. Therefore we cannot trust anybody around us. Even in the family also, one member cannot trust the other member, but they call it a family. Ridiculous. There is no trust when you have no trust in another person. How can you call it a family? How can you call it a society? So that is what is happening by the increasing spirit of competition between people. Because of the fear, everybody is haunted by insecurity and fear. Then what happens? The animal instinct of fear is magnified in terms of the intelligence. Fear is animal instinct. A human being also has fear. Animals also are having fear. But in animals, the fear is just about their existence. Not more than that. But in human beings, it is very absurd that the fear gets magnified because of the intelligence. You see, because of the intelligence you should feel more secure and more happy, but because of this distorted intelligence, influenced by spirit of competition, that is why the animal instinct in us, that is the fear, it gets magnified. Then we have fear about everything, insecurity. What is going to happen to me? If I get enough money or not? If I get all my desires fulfilled or not? So all this sense of insecurity with everything. What is going to happen to me? If he is a businessman, every moment his mind is engaged, whether I can get profit or not. He has always fear in his mind that he may get a loss in the business. So he wants to make a profit every moment. Similarly, if he is employed in any office, then he has fear about his employment. Every moment he is afraid if something is done to him, to his employment, by his boss or by his colleagues, so he cannot trust anybody. So, virtue becomes impossible. In such a condition, virtue cannot act. How we can live happily is only by being virtuous. By using our virtues only we can be happy. But if virtue is impossible, how can we be happy? Let virtue be the strength of my intelligence. That is what we, in every evening in the invocation given by Master E.K., we are uttering this sentence, let virtue be the strength of my intelligence. So this intelligence is very sharp. Intelligence is a sharp instrument. If virtue, if this instrument is not joined with virtue, how will be our life? Most dangerous. It is just like you have a sharp knife in your hand. So how do you use this knife? It's a sharp knife. You can cut the vegetables with the knife. If you are not careful, you can cut your fingers with this knife. So, virtue, without virtue you have no happiness. But when intelligence is distorted, then there is no virtue. So intelligence should be supported by virtue. Intelligence by itself without virtue is very dangerous. So happiness is replaced from its state of realization. Happiness will remain only as a concept. It cannot come into experience in this state. when your intelligence is not supported by virtue, then you will only think of happiness as a concept in your mind, but not in real experience. We speak of happiness, but without really having an experience. So what is the use without experience if you have only concept? Then you are not happy in life. Then what happens? Possessive nature increases. So possessing replaces living. You cannot live happily because of this, and therefore you become possessive. You try to purchase happiness, which is impossible. You can get happiness, you can experience happiness only when your intelligence is supported by virtue. Without virtue, you cannot experience happiness. And happiness is something which cannot be purchased. If I ask a question to the master, what I have to do to be happy? The reply is to be happy only. If you do anything else without being happy, you cannot be happy. We do so many things in our life. Why? Everybody wants to be happy. But most of the people are not happy. You ask anybody, what do you want? I want to be happy. But are you happy? No. Why? Because do you have no intelligence? Yes, I am intelligent. Then why are you not happy? Because my intelligence is not supported by virtue. That is the secret. If a person is very intelligent but not using his virtue, then he cannot be happy for the whole life. We are not living happily because of intelligence, but most people, they think that intelligence is most important to be happy. No. So we want to be happy, but we are not happy. To be happy is very simple. But to be simple is very difficult. That is the problem. It is because our intelligence, not supported by virtue, will not allow us to live with simplicity. We are not able to be simple in our thinking and in our action. Then how can we be happy? Without simplicity, nobody cannot experience happiness. It is only a concept. So, with all this disturbance, because it is like a vicious circle. So with all this disturbance, this causes a great strain upon the lower vehicles, that means our body and our vital force. So our vital force gets very stressed because of this condition of our mind. When our mind is in such a condition, then it exerts great pressure on our vital force. And the result is, when the vital force is under heavy pressure, the result is manifested in the form of a disease on the physical plane. You see? All this is because of getting identified with our impressions, and all this is because the behavior of the mind is not suspended because of this. That means chitta vritti is not suspended. So this is the result of no stoppage or suspension of the behavior of the mind. So ultimate result is ultimately we get into a disease, experience of a disease on the physical plane. A disease is manifested on the physical plane because of all this. And all the habits in our life, in our daily life, are formed not according to need but according to the taste. For example, if a person is habituated to drink every day, in the morning wakes up from bed and drinks a glass of beer, is it a need for the body? No. Then why he is drinking? Because he has a desire to drink it. So where is the origin of a desire? The mind. Desires belong to the mind and needs belong to the body. This we have to clearly differentiate. We have to understand this very clearly. Suppose I feel hungry, that is a need of the body. But suppose if a friend of mine has brought something very tasty, attractive and very tasty, but at that time I am not hungry. So if I eat, this is because I get identified with the taste of that special food. And it's very tasty. So my mind received an impression, this food is very tasty. So then the mind builds up a desire to eat that food. It makes no discrimination because the desire is so strong. So then we forget that whether it is a desire or a need. When I am not hungry, it is not needed to eat, whether it may be very tasty or whatever it may be. When I am hungry, then it is an indication that the food is needed. So, this is the need of the body. To be hungry, to be thirsty, to have rest, all these are needs of the body. All the other things are desires only, not needs. If I am hungry, I can have food, because that is an indication from my body. I need food. Then I can use the taste to the food, because I have to eat the food, I can make it tasty. That is not forbidden. But because it is tasty, I want to eat when I am not hungry, then it is forbidden. Because it is not a need, it is only a desire, which has sprout from the mind, not indicated by the body. So we have to be very clear that needs belong to the body and desires belong to the mind. So we have to make this discrimination. So if we make a habit, if we form a habit not according to need, in this example what I told you, every morning some fellow, after waking up, he wants to have a glass of beer. It is not a need to the body. But because of the desire in the mind, it became a habit. So, his taste is conditioned by the reaction of the habit of the mind. So he is conditioned, his mind is conditioned now. They will affect the body and mind through their working centers. These habits, every habit, there are many such things. Habit. Because formation of habit is one of the laws of nature. Everything is going on because of habit. So without habit, we cannot exist. So this habit forming nature is there in the nature, working of nature. Therefore we have also this habit forming nature. But we have to use our discrimination in the forming of habit. We have to make a habit depending on the need. This is where we have to use our discrimination. We have this power of discrimination in us. Everyone has this power of discrimination. This is what is called buddhi. So this discriminative faculty, which is called buddhi, is there in every person. But we are not using it. It is given as an instrument by nature to make use of it, but we are not using it. It is locked. As if we keep our valuable things in a locker in the bank and lock it. In the same manner, we have locked this faculty in us very safely inside and not opening this lock to use it anymore in the life. Our life is spent away without using this discrimination, power of discrimination. So then what is happening? Habits are formed desire, because we are not using according to the need. That is the problem. So every habit, we have so many habits in our daily life. Every one of us, we have so many habits in our daily life. So the habits are formed basing on the desires. That is why we have so much of disharmony in our life. So what we have to do is we have to identify this and try to replace this desire by the need. That is what we have to do. We have to replace it. For this we have to make again and again an effort. That is what we are also going to study in the further aphorisms. So we crave for the best, but our concept of the best is according to the habituated taste. You see? In the morning when he wakes up, he says, I want to have a wonderful cup of coffee. So he is conditioned by coffee, by desire. Actually it is not needed by the body, but it is a desire for the best. So everything he wants to have the best, which is a concept in the mind. What you call best is a concept in the mind. This concept is formed according to the behavior in terms of the taste, but not according to the need. So in this manner, in this aspect, it makes no difference whether he is a professor in the university or whether he is a very important person in the society, whether he is a doctor, and whether he is a philosopher. All these things, they cannot influence his habit. So his habit became more stronger than all these things. So therefore, we have to find out, we have to discriminate, we have to find out with every habit what we are having in our daily life, everybody has to find out himself, identify himself, every habit of himself, whether it is according to the need or according to desire. We have to make a filtration of this. So, this logic which is conditioned by the habit. Suppose, for example, a person cannot make his stool in the toilet without having a cup of coffee before, strong coffee. So after some years, his mind makes a logic that then he advises his friends that you take a cup of coffee in the morning, then you will have very easy stool. So this is a logic which is built on the mind, on the base of his habit, which is not, in fact it is not real and scientific, but it became so strong. Habit. So all our concepts of God, love, happiness, all are conditioned and colored by our taste. And then they deviate from the truth. That is what is happening in our daily life. All this is happening like this. It is because of getting identified with the behavior of the mind. So, vritti, sarupyam, itaratra. So, if suspension of the behavior of the mind is not attained, then you get identified with the behavior of the mind, and this results, this conditions the whole life. The whole life is conditioned. You have no freedom at all. You are like a prisoner. You see a prisoner who is put in the prison, he cannot make his own decisions, he cannot go out by his will. He cannot go out because he is in the prison. So we are also imprisoned. We have imprisoned ourselves. Nobody has imprisoned us. We are imprisoned by ourselves, by our habits and concepts which are based on this type of behavior of the mind, which behaves, which reacts in terms of the impressions. That is what is meant by this sutra, vritti sarupyam itaratra. Otherwise means if the behavior of the mind is not suspended, then you get identified with the behavior of your mind. That is the meaning of this aphorism number 4. So, in our next class, we enter into the study of how many number of behaviors are there for the mind which are identified and what are they. This we will study in our next class on the next week, next Sunday. I thank you all very much for your presence, and I hope that our study of each aphorism is clear, and we have to, as far as possible, try to put into practice in our daily life. Thank you all.